Charles, back to you on more countryside news.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, of course, farming being but one economic activity that takes place in the countryside. The Labour manifesto from this year has said that under animal welfare considerations or concerns, they are going to improve the situation. And they say they will ban trail hunting and the import of hunting trophies. Now, this, of course, is an extension, effectively, of the Blair-era Hunting Act of 2004, which came into effect as a ban in 2005. Now, regardless of your views on the practice of hunting, the situation at hand is that trail hunting has effectively replaced hunting with dogs. There were exemptions for stalking or flushing wild animals, effectively to prevent damage to livestock, feed, crops, timber, etc., or to obtain meat for human or animal consumption, or to participate in a field trial. But essentially that was with a restriction to working with only 2 dogs and not working underground. So, of course, it was effectively impossible to actually continue to hunt. Now, even The Guardian at the time, back in 2004, Geoffrey Wheatcroft writing here, Georgia on hunting is a sop to MPs for war in Iraq. And I think it is worth just going back and having a look over some of the things that were being said at the time. Short of improbable developments in the courts, fox hunting will become illegal in England on Friday. Many people reading this will no doubt be pleased, but I suggest that the left might pause before gloating and wipe any smiles off their faces. This is a very nasty piece of political work indeed, and what it says about the Labour Party is truly horrible. For those who don't know the figures, by the way, more than 700 hours of parliamentary time were devoted to the hunting ban, as against 7 hours spent on the decision to invade Iraq, a comparison that sums up the way we are governed. Now, I would absolutely agree with that statement then and now. To go back to the practice of trail hunting, which effectively came into being after the ban on fox hunting, this is a statement from the British Hound Sports Association, just to define what it is, but specifically the concerns on the other side of the argument, effectively, which are that animals do still get chased, and that the Hound Association stating here, if the hounds pick up the scent of a live quarry, the huntsman and other members of the staff stop the hounds as soon as they are made aware that the hounds are no longer following a trail that has been laid. Okay, that is somewhat questionable because there does seem to be a significant degree of evidence to suggest that doesn't always turn out like that. Nonetheless, they go on, due to the persistent, spurious allegations from our opponents that hunts are not trail hunting, the presence of saboteurs is trying to intentionally disrupt the legal activities. Hunts record and keep evidence of their trail laying, and files are kept of the day's activities. Now, as I said at the start, effectively, this concerns what goes on in the economic situation or the economic dimension of the rural environment. So if this is of interest to you, then the British Hound Sports Association is having a National Trail Hunting Day this Saturday, the 14th of September. But the principle, of course, is that the government is proposing to do away with an activity that provides a significant economic contribution to the rural environment. And here we have the Countryside Alliance a couple of years ago having a sort of look back at what happened back in 2004. And an interesting remark by Tim Bonner, who's written for the Countryside Alliance, saying, I'm asked at least once a week, and have been for the past 20 years, when are we going to march again? And my answer is, we need a moment. Now, to me, this is an interesting remark and a strange way to look at things, because I would perceive that, in fact, the rural environment has been under attack from successive governments for an awfully long time. And I wrote to the Countryside Alliance last year on exactly this principle, to effectively ask why they didn't challenge the COVID restrictions due to their banner of liberty and livelihood. And I wrote, as part of a longer email, in 2020 and beyond, when a divisive and undemocratic campaign to destroy almost all of the British economy under the falsehood of a public health emergency, the Countryside Alliance remained silent. And their reply was that the COVID pandemic and subsequent policies put in place was not an area the Countryside Alliance had expertise in. So it was only right that we left the debate and discussions to those more qualified. They went on to say, I appreciate you are concerned about state control and being monitored and tracked, but our campaigns reflect the concerns of our members. And this is not an issue that is on their agenda for the Countryside Alliance to campaign on. Well, without wanting to have too much of a pop at the Countryside Alliance or their membership, I would say that they are staggeringly naive and very, very short-sighted not to have seen this coming, for they are in a terrible predicament now. And this was encapsulated in a letter I saw in the back of the programme from the amazing Frampton Fair of this year. It's a picture of a huntsman with a letter written on his back, which I'll read out, which is, "Dear Labour, what will you do with the hounds no longer used? What will you do with the horses? What jobs and houses will you find for thousands of those in hunt service? Will you collect the dead stock from farmers? Will you support the local pubs and shops no longer seeing the benefit of hunt events and hunting folk? Will you support the farriers with no work? Will you fix fences, plant hedges and trees? Will you provide a community who helps one another in any situation? No, you won't." And that is the bottom line here. The government are not suggesting any kind of economic alternative to this, and yet they're banging the drum about animal welfare. So just to remind you, as a concluding remark, under the guidance on home slaughter, we have a passage here on stunning animals before killing, which is a requirement according to their guidance. It is a requirement in law, and specifically they say if you kill an animal to eat on your property, you must know how to restrain, stun, and kill the animal humanely and quickly to avoid causing the animal any avoidable pain, distress, or suffering. However, slaughter without stunning, in accordance with religious rites, can only take place in an approved slaughterhouse. So for the government to suggest that they are intending to improve animal welfare at the same time as having guidance and policy and legislation that quite clearly has a very sort of at least flexible line on where exactly animal welfare is perceived to be is hypocrisy in the highest order, and they haven't considered the economic ramifications of what they're planning to do. So I would just encourage people to think about exactly what this is and put to one side the actual practice of trail hunting itself.
Charles, thank you for that. Now,